Good morning, my friends. Here again, Wednesday, August something, our local human construct. But I have a busy day, so I thought I'd just get started on answering your questions. And today's question is from Gina. Most of the questions are coming from readers of You Are the Universe, Discovering Your Cosmic Self and Why It Matters. I thank you for the support you've given this book, and without you, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So thank you once again. Today's question is from Gina. She said, when listening to the August 3rd Facebook discussion, Dr. Chopra said something like, no experience that awareness is having with itself is better than any other. Maybe I didn't say it that way. Maybe I said has no privileged position than the other, but some are more enjoyable than the others. Apparently, I also said this includes a psychotic experience. I remember saying that there's a thin line between sages, psychotics, and geniuses because they've all escaped the hypnosis of social conditioning. The only difference between a psychotic and a sage and a genius is the psychotic cannot integrate his or her experience, which is so totally out of the box or doesn't have a box to begin with, that they are deemed sick by society. So we need to actually have a broader perspective of that which we call psychosis. But anyway, Gina goes on to ask, so why do we as the human experience seem to innately think that certain things are morally wrong? For example, torture of other humans, whether it be in an abusive family situation or during war. This is a very good question. Well, the short answer to this, by the way, is war itself is morally wrong, but I'll discuss that in a moment. And also, if awareness is love, how can the experience of having it with itself seem so horrible in those situations? Why is it love and not something else? Thank you for this forum. It's a wonderful human construct. I think I'm getting somewhere when we all agree that everyday reality is a human construct. Okay, so let me answer your question as efficiently as I can. The first thing I want to say is that anything done out of a sense of moral duty or guilt or shame, even if it's good, is basically cunning hypocrisy. Period. So if you are feeling guilty about not helping your neighbor and you do it out of a sense of guilt or shame, then first of all you will suffer, and secondly it's ultimately going to expose your moral hypocrisy or cunning hypocrisy. So I personally do not subscribe to religious doctrine which begins with morality. For example, the 10 Commandments. So thou shalt do this and thou shalt not do this. This is a problem because the moment you are doing this because you think it's the right thing to do, even though you don't feel like doing it, it's going to cause stress and it's going to ultimately come out in some kind of behavior that will expose your shadow. The shadow is that part of ourselves that is embarrassed about itself. And if you don't have a shadow, it can only mean one thing: you're standing in the darkness. So the shadow is the polar opposite of light, of course, but it needs light for there to be the shadow. The shadow comes out when we feel guilt, when we do things in secrecy, when we have authority, when there's poor leadership, when there is permission to do harm, when there are passive bystanders in the midst of violence, and when there is absolute power or even relative power. And if you ignore your shadow, it's going to say to you, you're ignoring me, I'm going to embarrass you. So one of these days it'll come out. Sometimes our collective shadow comes out, as in times of war or polarized politics or economic deprivation or extreme poverty or poor leadership. I think we are seeing the emergence of our collective shadow right now in the world, and especially its escalation right now in the discourse between the United States and North Korea. But it's happening everywhere. It's happening in India and Pakistan. It's happening in many parts of Europe. It's happening everywhere in the world. So I think each of us now needs to confront our own shadow and forgive it and expose it and move on. But that's a tall order. So let me continue to answer Gina's question. Then what is the role of ethics and morality in our spiritual evolution? So this is what I want to say. Ethics and morality are not the means to spiritual evolution. They are the byproduct of spiritual evolution. So, going back to the Vedanta and the five kleshas, the causes of human suffering, not knowing your true self. Your true self is inseparable with all that exists. Number two, craving and hanging on to and being addicted to that which cannot be held on to, which is all experience. Number three, the fear of impermanence. Number four, the identification with the socially induced hallucination called the ego, the separate self. And five, the fear of death. So these are not causes of suffering alone, they are the result of ignorance of our true nature. When we, through yoga and self-reflection and self-observation and metacognition and observing ourselves having a sensory experience, observing our body, observing the inside of our body through introception, observing the web of relationship, observing mental space, observing ourselves making a choice. When we have this kind of metacognition, then automatically it leads us past the secret passages and the dark alleys and the ghost-filled attics of the conditioned mind. And as we experience going past these to the true self, the field of all possibilities, the field of synchronicity, the field of intentionality, the field of unpredictability, so we lose our habitual certainties, and the field of infinite creativity, we automatically go in the direction of truth, goodness, beauty, harmony, love, compassion, joy, equanimity. So we are holy, which means we are whole and we are healed. That is the only way to get to that level of being where morality and ethics are not an imperative but a natural expression of our being. And in that there is no hypocrisy. So I'll come back to you in 15 seconds and we'll complete this discussion. Thank you for your patience. So what I was saying is that ethics and morality are not a means to self-awareness and self-realization or self-discovery. It's the other way around. Self-awareness, self-discovery, self-realization automatically lead to and ethics and morality that becomes our spontaneous behavior. So I will end today's discussion with two short stories. The first one is that of a Buddhist monk, or rather two young Buddhist monks. A young Buddhist monk and an older Buddhist monk. And they're on a pilgrimage, and they come to a river, and there's a lovely young maiden there who does not know how to swim, and she wants to be carried across the river. And so the old monk is kind of sworn to celibacy, and so he refuses to carry her. The younger monk very willingly and smilingly puts her on his shoulder and carries her across the river. And of course, he drops her on the other side of the river. They continue their pilgrimage, and after a while, the old monk has a scowl in his face, and he looks at the young monk and he says, "I can't believe you did that." And the young monk says, "Did what?" And the old monk says, "Carry that young woman on your shoulder. We are not supposed to do that. Remember, we are sworn to celibacy." And the young monk says, I dropped her off 6 hours ago. Why are you still carrying her? Sean Webb knows the story. Why are you still carrying her? So that's the difference between natural, spontaneous morality and then imposed morality. The other story is also very popular, and you probably have heard of it. It's the story of a person, again in this case, a Buddhist monk, and he's trying to rescue a what do you call it? A spider? No, it's a scorpion. He's trying to rescue a scorpion from drowning, and every time he tries to rescue the scorpion bites him, and he has to let go, and then again this scorpion starts drowning, and so he tries to rescue the scorpion again. And this goes on for a while, and then there's somebody else who's watching this whole show and comes up to this monk, and he says, "Are you stupid? Don't you know that it is the nature of the scorpion to bite, and you keep trying to save it?" And the monk responds, "Just as it is the nature of the scorpion to bite, it is my nature to save." So there you are, two great stories to remember regarding ethics and morality. So right now we're seeing escalation of tensions between our president, Mr. Donald Trump, and Kim Jong-un, and they're both behaving very belligerently, I think we'll agree. And today on Twitter I posted 10 principles for conflict resolution. So if you want to look at them and comment on them, please go to my Twitter feed. In the meanwhile, have a wonderful day, keep reaching for the stars, and keep your feet on the ground. And thank you for supporting You Are the Universe, discovering your cosmic self and why it matters. Take care.